hey yo, Emily in Paris season 2 happened. Let's say it was interesting. A little recap for everyone who hasn't seen season 1 or something. It's about Emily. She's an American and she goes to Paris to work there. That's basically it. That's the whole plot of the whole season. That's literally it. So Emily goes to Paris. In the first season she has a boyfriend, but they break up because he's not going to come over because he is an inconsistent American who doesn't want to travel, and Europe, ugh, yuck. Emily is basically the perfect worker, and the French have absolutely no work ethic, and she's the best in her job, even though I've got no clue what she does actually. She becomes an influencer with 20k Instagrammers because she posts 2 pictures and something on Twitter, because that's how it works, as we all know. She makes friends with a Chinese girl called Mindy. They apparently also lived together at some point, at least in season 2 it was suddenly it, and to be honest, season 1 was so bad I did not want to rewatch it. But in season 2 they lived together. She bangs her neighbor that lives under her, and oh my god, to be clear, I am so happy that they striked. Emily's inability to count to 5 / know that she lives on the top floor in her building where the stairs end and not one beneath that, because that was a point in season 5. Like, that girl was too dumb to know that she was living on the top floor. Gosh, oh. Yeah, as you might be able to tell, I'm not the biggest fan of Emily. But in season 1, I'm basically the only one, because every character in that show loved Emily, and they were romanticizing America and their work ethics and how they somewhat dress, their culture, and God. And they were trying to say that all French, or they were saying that all French people were incompetent idiots, and were looking up to the superior ideas of the Americans, and especially in this case Emily, because she's so good, and Americans and blue jeans and whatever. They got a lot of critique for being discriminating / depicting stereotypes and focusing too much on stereotypes and putting especially Americans on a pedestal in which they were represented as basically gods. It was also pointed out that it might also be somewhat racist, especially since I've seen The Witcher, and The Witcher, I can link you that video I made about it, was so good at getting the critique, accepting the critique, and actually adjusting towards it, because the critique somewhat made sense. And Emily in Paris decided to somewhat do the same thing, but it's way too little and way too offensive. Because, for example, they had the critique that there were not a lot of diverse people in Paris in the show, because in the real Paris is a very diverse city. A lot of ethnicities there, and in the show just not. I'm pretty sure there were like 2, 3, for example, black characters running around in the background in season 2, and that's it. They were in the first episode in a drag club, and that's it. That's all they've shown on diversity. I mean, there's literally one character who's black and gay. If it would have been South Park, they would have also called him Token, because he's nothing more, to be honest, at least in season 1. In season 2, he has somewhat more of a personality, but he's gay and he is angry at Emily once. That's it. That's basically all of his personality. Instead of saying, okay, Americans are our gods and we should worship them, they still somewhat do that. They are actually making a lot of fun of Americans, which would be somewhat fine if it wouldn't have been in the context that they got critiqued for being invasive and discriminating and using stereotypes towards other ethnicities or other countries. So the first thing they decided, they bring in a random couple as customers for Savoir, and they're supposed to be German. They never state that they're German, but it's very obvious through their accent. They want to advertise, or Savoir wants to advertise it as a joke. Like, they want to advertise it through a slogan that reads something like, no one is going to ask about the secrets that you have in your luggage or in your baggage. And you just have these two Germans there sitting, not reacting whatsoever. The people from Savoir trying to explain why it's funny. First of all, that is not funny whatsoever. And second of all, what do you expect? Third of all, what? Saying that French are lazy and making a complete token, a complete stereotype, and Americans being good, and switching it to, okay, Germans are not funny. And then afterwards, there is also a British guy who's always going to pubs, drinking beer. He is fighting against learning French with his hands and feet. It's so laughable. It's ridiculous. They're using every stereotype on that Englishman that is from London. He drinks a lot, and at one occasion, he literally burps into Emily's face. I'm not kidding about this. In this context, I'd also like to talk about two more people. First of all, Alfie, the English guy, the second love interest, and Petra. Emily gets to know both of them in the French class. She wants to sit with Alfie, but Alfie doesn't want to sit with her because he's her complete mirror from season 1, and he basically has to counteract her. So we hate him more in the beginning than her, and she can be the righteous person, say like, oh yeah, but I want to learn French. And he's the grumpy one that says, no, I am an English person. I do not speak other languages because that is how that works. Do not come to me with French. Nah, 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 nah. And then she sits with Petra. They somewhat hit off pretty well, and they decide to go get a coffee or go shopping. And on their first time going out, Petra, of whom we know that she is female, her name is Petra, she's from Ukrainian, and that woman randomly decides to go steal with Emily for the first time they're meeting. I mean, what the actual fuck? How can you be so offensive towards other ethnicities and people from other countries? I mean, seriously, what is wrong here? Obviously, we have to have an Eastern woman that steals or likes to steal, because we do not depict enough stereotypes as of right now. Something also interesting to note here is that Petra has a very heavy accent. As mentioned, the Germans also have a very heavy accent, and Alfie, the Englishman, also has a very heavy accent, which is very interesting to see since Emily seems the only one to be without accent. She only speaks a couple of words in French, so it's hard to decide whether she has a heavy accent or not. But it is interesting to see that when Emily speaks with other people that struggle with French, obviously, and might also struggle with English, because don't get me wrong, English is a very universal language, but it does not mean that everyone speaks English. And it also doesn't mean that everyone speaks English very well. So it's interesting to see that Emily just doesn't care whatsoever and uses idioms and phrases all day long, and not caring whatsoever if another person might be saying, well, I don't understand that, we don't have that idiom here. But as of right now, that is enough of a rant, because I could talk about this topic forever, and maybe I do a different video about the stereotypes depicted in it, or the language used in Emily in Paris, because those are actually very interesting topics. And there is also a Dutch person introduced that sleeps with Sylvie. He's her photographer, and it's so random because once they walk around and they are going to buy some ice cream in Paris, he suddenly randomly comes up and starts speaking very bad Italian, might I add, with the person that sells the ice. And then Sylvie's like, oh, I'm so impressed. What languages do you speak? And he just counts on like Dutch, a bit of German, Italian, French. I'm pretty sure it was Japanese and some other languages. So he is trying to sound very impressive and important and, ooh, look how many languages I speak. And then Sylvie starts also speaking Italian. It's so much better. the ice salesman, also start speaking Italian, and both of their Italian is so much better than the Dutch person. So it's like, what's going on? And I start randomly speaking in Italian about Rome, because so we live there. And it goes on for like 5 minutes, not that long, but it just goes on, and that they're speaking Italian for absolutely no reason until they run into other people. And I'm pretty sure they start speaking English again, which is fine. It's just so random that they all speak Italian for some reason. And it never happens again, and it never occurs again. I don't know why that is there. Something they did improve, to be fair, is that in the first season, people that were French always spoke English wherever they were. And if Emily was there as someone who did not speak French, they would still randomly speak English. They mostly did not do that in the second season. It happened a couple of times that people that were all French spoke English, but not that often, so that's better. They also improved that in the first season, Emily made absolutely no effort whatsoever to start learning French. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was one scene in which she was in language class. It is so laughable and so funny, because in the second season it's a bit more of a plot behind that she needs, or a side story, that she wants to learn French. And at the very end of the season, we know that she's been in France for 6 months, and she's still in an A1 class. A1, that's nothing. That's saying hello and how are you? I want to buy strawberries on the market or something like that. And she still can't do that after 6 months living in Paris? Okay. It just goes on about the drama, and they try to show a bit more French culture, which is again very funny when you have the information that she's been there for 6 months. And it was in the first episode, she figures out that Madame Pipi exists, and you're telling me she's never been on a toilet, on a public toilet or on a restaurant's toilet for 6 months? What's going on? It's interesting. Also, her style is quite interesting for some reasons, because as I mentioned, they were once in a drag club, and Emily's style is usually exactly like the drag club style whenever she walks around on a day-to-day basis, which in itself isn't bad. If it's her style, go for it. Also, one critique point was that her financials don't add up, since she's in this marketing firm. She would never be able to afford all those designer clothes that she's wearing on a day-to-day basis. So they're randomly throwing in, okay, yeah, but she gets perfume for free because she works in a marketing firm. And first of all, okay, good for her, she gets perfume, but that would not translate to clothes, and especially not her whole wardrobe. And she would still not able to afford such a wardrobe for the wage that she has and the money that she makes. So that makes absolutely no sense, which is also funny to see, since again she dresses very, very bright and very colorful. I mean, she was matching the drag club vibe from the very first episode, the whole season, especially in one episode when her boss, Maddie, comes from America to visit. Then she decided randomly to be Cruella de Vil for some reason. I'm not kidding. If she would have colored her hair, she could have gone as Cruella de Vil. So basically, Lily Collins brings the drag club vibe throughout the whole season, but in very thin. So her thinness is hardcore glorified. You can always see her belly button. Everything that she wears is basically showing and depicting how thin she is, and very flattering towards her being thin. They want to demonstrate how thin she is. She's always getting told, oh my god, you look so great, you look so gorgeous, and so on. That was an interesting choice, to put it easy. I mean, as I said, she's wearing once a not so much bright, colorful dress when her boss shows up. And then they also make so much fun of Americans. And I mean, I think they're trying to overcorrect and say, okay, we did shit in the first season in depicting French people as lazy idiots, so now let's depict Americans as uncultured, unstylish people. Because the first time her boss, who's very, very pregnant, shows up in a mini dress in a leopard pattern to work, and whenever she's on screen, she's wearing these mini dresses, these itsy bitsy tiny dresses that barely cover her ass. She just comes in, bursts into the office and steals the space and place and the bureau from Sylvie, changes it and just decides, okay, I'm gonna stay here, and tries to depict them or tries to tell them how they should work. It's like, oh, we've got one designer. Oh, well, look, another designer is free. We should take him in. And everyone tells her, no, that's not a good idea because those two hate each other. That is a conflict of interest. And she's like, yeah, well, I don't care. And she forces those two to basically be both her clients. And one of them says, Pierre Gadot, says, oh no, you know what, screw yourself, I quit because I can do whatever I want. And then she makes Sylvie responsible for that, even though she told her this would happen. She's like, no, okay, you know what, I quit. And the American's like, yeah, great, so I don't have to pay her anymore and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, here, and everyone else quits too. So they basically have no office whatsoever. Emily is between those fronts and she's torn apart, and her American friend tells her, no, don't worry, you're good. Whatever happens, you keep your job because you're great and you're the best. Emily says, okay, but we need like a lot of people to make up the experience they've got. And Maddie, the American boss, is like, no, I want to have young people I can mold and bend them to my will. And I was like, wait, like me? Maddie, yeah, exactly like you. Well, not exactly, but yeah. You just see how Emily's like, oh my God, that's not what I want. That is horrible. I got an itsy bit of culture and an itsy bits of life. And I know now that work isn't everything because I was in France for half a year and I'm so much more educated now and stuff like that. And she meets up with Sylvie and Sylvie tells her, okay, cool, we take all of our clients because that is how the real world works, obviously. We want you to come with us because half of our clients, the most important clients, I've got no clue, want you to come as well because you're the best at your job, because Americans are just the best at getting a job done. You just need basically the right push and have the French finesse, but Americans are the best. And it's funny because there are like two people like, nah, she's not that good. And another person's like, yeah, she's good, but don't overdo it. It's like, yeah, but you still we have to worship Americans, basically. It's the same vibe. What logic is we only come with you if she comes with you? What? Emily, the independent woman that can think for herself that she is, decides to go to her downstairs neighbor, Gabrielle. And I'm like, oh my God, we could be a thing, even though I somewhat have a boyfriend now, because I might stay longer in Paris. And he decides to get back to his girlfriend and let her move in. It's like, oh, well, that sucks. And it somewhat ends on a cliffhanger that Emily calls Sylvie and it's like, okay, cool, yeah, I thought about it, I'm gonna decide. I made a decision and it ends. So yeah, the ending was somewhat incisive since we have to ask ourselves, how is it going further? I would argue that she is either accepting the job or she's going back to Chicago/London and decides that is a big mistake and returns to London since it is called Emily in Paris and they want to make money. So to be honest, this season or this show is not more than just making money. It was boring and I was, to be honest, expecting more because the first season left so much room for improvements and they did none of it. They were just, oh, we were insensitive towards those people? Well then, let's be insensitive towards other people, because that is better for some reason. And no, it's not. What was the logic here? So, I don't know, season 3, I expect them to be insensitive towards, maybe Scots if she goes to London, or Canadians, maybe Mexicans, Chinese people, since Mindy is Chinese, so maybe we see more from her and more stereotypes. This show is utter garbage, to be honest. It wasn't really entertaining because it was always just, you were just eye-rolling at everything that happened. We have a German company that wants to sell luggage, and for some reason they want to have the face of a designer on it to sell it because, yeah, obviously. Then we have the problem that the designer doesn't want it, but then he wants it, and then there is a rival designer that posts a picture, and then there's another drama that goes on, and then it should get down, but it's not, but then it is. And Emily has to learn after half a year in Paris that it is illegal to work on weekends. And there's literally a phrase, why does everyone keep saying that? Well, because it is. Who do you think they will slam in season 3? Any other ethnicities or countries? There are a lot of stereotypes that you would think of they could come in handy for the season to just have an eye catcher, I suppose. Or, as they call it, comedy, since, again, stereotypes are funny. Write me in the comments, and if you like this video, leave a like or dislike. It's up to your discretion. Have a nice day.